"Mommy, it hurts." Lucas cried, clutching his little arm. Clara rushed into the emergency room, heart pounding, ready to face the pain of her son's injury. But nothing could prepare her for the shock waiting inside. Behind the sterile white walls stood the one man she thought she'd never see again, Dr. Daniel Foster. 5 years ago, he walked away, leaving her to carry a secret she never dared reveal. And now, with her child in her arms, fate had dragged them back together in the most unforgiving place. The question wasn't whether Daniel would heal Lucas, but what would happen when he recognized himself in the boy's face. If stories like this touch your heart, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening to this story from? Your support is what keeps these emotional journeys alive. The emergency room at St. Vincent Hospital was busy that Thursday afternoon. Clara Evans held Lucas's hand tightly as she walked through the hallways, trying to mask the nervousness growing in her chest. The 5-year-old boy was crying softly, holding his left arm against his body, the result of a fall at the school playground. "It hurts a lot, Mommy." "Lucas," murmured his light brown eyes filled with tears. "I know, sweetheart. The doctor will take care of you." "Okay. It'll be better soon." Clara whispered, kissing the top of his head, breathing in that familiar scent of children's shampoo and adventure. The receptionist, a middle-aged woman with glasses perched on her nose, looked at them with a professional expression. "Documents, please." Clara rummaged through her purse with one hand, keeping Lucas close with the other. Her fingers trembled slightly, not just from worry about her son, but from an unexplainable anxiety that had taken hold of her since they'd entered the hospital. Something in the air felt heavy, charged with an energy she couldn't identify. Lucas Evans. 5 years old, she said, handing over the papers. "Possible arm fracture. Room 3. Go down the hall to the right. Dr. Foster Son. We'll see you in a few minutes." The name hit Clara like a punch to the stomach. Foster, ma. It couldn't be. The universe wouldn't be that cruel. She felt her legs waver for a moment, but forced herself to keep walking. There were thousands of Fosters in the world. It didn't mean anything. But when they opened the office door and her eyes met his, I'm simply stopped. Daniel Foster was standing with his back to the door, examining an X-ray against the light. His dark hair a little shorter than before, but still with those rebellious curls she used to wrap around her fingers. His broad shoulders under the white coat, that confident posture she knew so well. For a moment, it was as if 5 years hadn't passed. He turned slowly, and when their eyes met, it was like all the air was sucked out of the room. "Clara." His voice came out almost inaudible. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. There he was, the man who had disappeared from her life when she needed him most. The man whose medical school dreams were more important than any promise of love. The man who never knew she was pregnant. "Dr. Foster," she murmured, her voice coming out colder than she intended. "This is my son, Lucas." He fell at the playground and hurt his arm. Daniel's eyes dropped to Lucas, who hid even further behind his mother. For a moment that felt like eternity, he just stared at the boy. Clara could see something changing in his expression. Confusion, recognition, shock. "Hello there, champ." Daniel said softly, crouching down to Lucas's height. Can you tell me how you got hurt? Lucas looked to his mother for approval before answering. I was on the slide and I tried to do it like Superman, but I fell. An involuntary smile crossed Daniel too. Superman, huh? He gets hurt sometimes too, you know, but he always gets better. Clara watched the interaction with her heart racing. The way Chomp, Daniel Tontu, spoke to Lucas was natural caring, and she couldn't ignore how alike they were, the shape of their eyes, the curve of their smile, even the way Tatu. Lucas Aints tilted his head when he was curious. Let's take a look at that arm. Okay, Daniel Ushimo said, standing up. His eyes met. Clara bows again, and she saw in them a storm of emotions that mirrored her own confusion. He began examining. Lucas, with professional care, but Clara could notice the tension in his movements. Every time his fingers touched the boy's arm, it was as if he was discovering something new, something that left him increasingly disturbed. Doesn't look like a fracture. Daniel murmured more to himself. Probably just a bruise. But let's get an X-ray to be sure. Does an X-ray hurt? Lucas asked, his eyes wide. No, it doesn't hurt at all. It's like taking a picture just from the inside. Daniel explained, his gentle voice contrasting with the tension in his face. Clara could feel the weight of the silence between them. There were so many unspoken things, so many questions hanging in the air. She wanted to scream, wanted to run, wanted to explain everything all at once. But all she could do was stand there watching the man she once loved examine the son they'd had together without him knowing. The nurse will take you for the X-ray. Daniel-san, said, his voice professional. But Clara could hear the barely perceptible tremor. Then you'll come back here. When the nurse came to get Lucas, Clara stood up to go with him, but Daniel's voice stopped her. Clara, can we talk after he has the exam? She turned slowly, meeting his eyes. It had been so long since they'd last been in the same room, breathing the same air. And now here they were, in the middle of a situation she'd imagined thousands of times, but never like this. There's nothing to talk about. Daniel, she said, but her voice failed on the last syllable. Please. That single word carried the weight of 5 years of silence. Clara nodded almost imperceptibly before following Lucas out of the room as she walked down the hallway holding her son's hand. Clara felt that her carefully constructed life had just crumbled. The secret she'd been keeping had become a ticking time bomb, and the hands had just struck zero. The X-ray confirmed there was no fracture, just a bruise that would heal in a few days. Lucas was visibly relieved, swinging his legs on the examination table while Clara adjusted a makeshift sling around his arm. But the boy's calm contrasted dramatically with the storm brewing inside her. Can I play at the playground tomorrow, Mama? Lucas asked, his eyes shining with the typical childhood resilience to pain. We'll see how you're feeling, sweetheart. Clara replied, running her hand through his hair that had exactly the same texture and color as Daniel. When they returned to the office, Daniel Guanc was sitting behind the desk, but Clara could see his hands trembling slightly as he wrote in the chart. He looked up when they entered, and again that intense gaze swept over Lucas's face. So Superman. Daniel said, forcing a smile. Looks like you didn't break anything, but you'll need to wear that sling for a few days. Okay. For how long? Lucas asked, pouting. About 3 or 4 days. I bet you'll be the bravest boy in school. Clara watched the interaction, her heart breaking little by little. The way Tante Daniel looked at Lucas was no longer just professional. There was something deeper there, a connection he himself couldn't yet fully name. Lucas. How about you wait in the waiting room for a few minutes? The nurse has some coloring books. Clara suggested, trying to keep her voice steady. Can I take my car? Lucas asked, pulling a small red car from his pocket. Of course you can, champ. Daniel answered before Clara could speak. And if you can color a whole picture, I'll give you a special sticker. Aftertone. Lucas. Left with the nurse, the silence in the office became deafening. Daniel stood up slowly, bracing his hands on the desk, his knuckles white from the pressure. How long? The question came out as a rough whisper. Clara closed her eyes, trying to find strength. Daniel. How long? Clara. He repeated, firmer this time. 5.5 years. Her voice was barely audible. Daniel ran his hand over his face, and Clara could see the exact moment it clicked. His eyes widened and he collapsed into the chair as if his legs could no longer support him. My God, He couldn't finish the sentence. Your son. The words came out of Clara, like a painful confession she'd kept for years. Lucas is your son. Daniel. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of both their heavy breathing. Daniel rested his elbows on the desk and buried his face in his hands. Why didn't you ever tell me? When he finally looked up, Clara saw tears he was trying to hold back. Why? Clara. I had the right to know, right? The word came out more bitter than she intended. You left. Daniel, you said medicine was your priority, that you didn't have time for complications. Remember that word, complications? I never called you a complication. Not directly, but that's what you meant when you said you needed to focus on your studies. That serious relationships were a burden you couldn't carry. Clara sat in the chair across from him, her own hands shaking. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after you left for medical school. I tried calling you. You tried calling me. I never got 3 times. Daniel. 3 times. The first time a classmate of yours said you were too busy. The second time you answered yourself and said you were studying for an important exam and would call back later. You never did. The third time. Clara paused, the pain of that moment still alive in her memory. The third time you said we needed to take a break, that your career was more important than anything we'd had. Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. I was 7 weeks pregnant. Daniel. Scared alone, not knowing what to do. And you said your career was more important than anything we'd had. Clara. Wiped away a tear that insisted on falling. So I decided that if you didn't want to be part of my life, you wouldn't be part of my son's life either. Our son, he corrected, his voice thick with emotion. My son, I was the one who spent 9 months pregnant alone, who got up in the middle of the night when he cried, who taught him to walk, to talk, to tie his shoes, who stayed awake when he had a fever, who... She stopped, realizing she was being cruel, but the pain of years couldn't simply be ignored. Daniel got up and walked to the window, turning his back to her. You should have insisted, should have told me about the pregnancy, and you should have returned my calls. Clara shot back, but you didn't, and I learned to live without you. Lucas learned to live without a father. Does he ask about me? The question caught her off guard. Clara sighed. Sometimes. I always tell him his father had to leave before he was even born, that sometimes adults make difficult decisions. And now, Daniel turned to face her. What do we do now? Clara looked at him, really looked. He was more mature, with some lines around his eyes that weren't there before. But he was still the same man she'd fallen in love with in college, the same man who had left and broken her heart. I don't know, she answered honestly. Honestly, Daniel. I don't know. A noise at the door interrupted them. Lucas appeared with a colored drawing in his hands, a proud smile on his face. Look, doctor, I drew a doctor saving people. Daniel Lontoto crouched down again, receiving the drawing, with hands that still trembled slightly. In the picture, a man in a white coat was smiling next to a happy family. It's perfect. Lucas, you're an incredible artist. Lucas smiled, and in that smile, Clara saw Daniel, completely the same expression, the same light in his eyes. She knew there was no going back now. The secret had been revealed, and their lives would never be the same. 3 days had passed since the reunion at the hospital, and Clara Pomps couldn't stop thinking about the conversation they'd had. Daniel Tissot had asked for her phone number, claiming he needed to follow up on Lucas's recovery, but they both knew there was much more behind that request. On Sunday morning, while Lucas was watching cartoons in the living room, the phone rang. Clara looked at the screen and her heart raced. Daniel. Hello. Clara. Hi, it's Daniel. His voice sounded nervous, hesitant. How is Lucas? Feeling better. His arm barely hurts anymore. She paused, hearing the familiar sounds of the house. Lucas, laughing at something on TV, the tick-tock of the kitchen clock. Daniel, what do you really want? A long silence followed. She could almost hear him gathering courage on the other end of the line. "I'd like to see him. Lucas. I mean, if you'll let me." Clara closed her eyes. She knew this moment would come, but she wasn't prepared. "Please, Clara. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but he's my son. I missed 5 years. I don't want to miss any more." The sincerity in his voice disarmed her. Looked at Lucas, who was humming along to the cartoon's theme song, completely oblivious to the conversation that was changing his life. "He doesn't know who you are," she said quietly. "To him, you're just the doctor who took care of his arm. I understand, and I won't tell him anything until you're ready. I just want to get to know him." An hour later, the doorbell rang. Lucas ran to the door, curious as always. "Who is it, Mommy?" "It's Dr. Foster. Remember him? He came to see how you're doing." Lucas broke into a smile. "The doctor who gave me the sticker when Clara opened the door. Daniel was standing there with a bag in his hand, wearing jeans and a navy blue t-shirt. Without the white coat, he looked younger, more like the man she had loved years ago. "Hi there, champ." Daniel Tom crouched down to Lucas' height. "How's that arm doing?" "Much better, want to see." Lucas moved his arm carefully, proud of his recovery. "Amazing. You really are brave." Daniel smiled, and Clara noticed how his eyes lit up when looking at his son. "I brought something for you." From the bag, he pulled out a set of miniature cars, fire trucks, ambulances, police cars. Lucas' eyes widened. "For me, of course. Heroes need special vehicles, don't they?" Clara watched the scene with a mix of emotion and apprehension, seeing Daniel interact with Lucas awakened feelings she had buried long ago. "Want to play with me?" Lucas asked, already opening the package of cars. "I'd love to." The two sat on the living room rug, and Clara was surprised by how natural the scene looked. Daniel seemed genuinely interested in Lucas' games, making siren sounds, creating rescue stories, laughing at the boys' silly jokes. "Foster," Lucas said suddenly. "Do you have kids?" The question caught both Daniel and Clara by surprise. Daniel glanced quickly at Clara before answering. "No." "Well, it's complicated." He ran his hand through his hair, a nervous gesture. Clara knew well. "But I'd really love to have a cool kid like you. You can be my friend then." "Mommy says friends are family too." Clara felt her eyes fill with tears. Lucas' innocence made everything both simpler and more complicated at the same time. "I'd love to be your friend." Daniel replied, his voice slightly thick with emotion. As the hours passed, Clara gradually relaxed. Daniel was patient with Lucas, answered the boy's endless questions, and most importantly, seemed genuinely interested in getting to know his son's personality. "Can I tell you a secret?" Lucas whispered to Daniel, as if it were the most important thing in the world. Sure, I know how to make pancakes. Mommy taught me. She makes the best banana pancakes in the whole world. Daniel Mom looked at Mom. Clara. Overwashed Lucas. His head, and something passed between them, a shared memory. He remembered the Sunday mornings when they were dating, when she would wake up early to make banana pancakes for both of them. It was his favorite dish back then. Banana pancakes really are special. Daniel said softly, "Want me to ask Mommy to make some for you before?" Clara could respond. Lucas was already on his feet. "Mommy, can Dr. Cho Foster have dinner with us, please?" Clara looked at Ma Daniel, who waited for her answer with a hopeful expression. "Well, I was going to make something simple anyway. Please, Mommy. He's my friend now." Clara sighed but couldn't resist her son's enthusiasm. "All right, but nothing too fancy, okay?" In the kitchen, while Clara prepared dinner, Daniel helped Lucas organize his new cars on the table. She watched them from the corner of her eye, noticing how Lucas had already gotten used to his presence. "Mommy, Dr. Wampton Foster knows so many things. He told me how the heart works." "Really, To?" Clara smiled despite the confusion in her feelings. "And he said, when I grow up, I can be a doctor too if I want." Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Can I help? You don't need to. I want to." They worked in silence for a few minutes. Daniel washing the dishes. Clara was using a kind of domestic dance that felt strangely familiar and natural at the same time. "Thank you," Clara said quietly, "for being so gentle with him. He's incredible." "Clara, you did an amazing job. I did what I could." After dinner, Lucas insisted that Daniel stay to watch his favorite cartoon. The three of them settled on the couch. Lucas in the middle talking non-stop about the characters. Clara and saw Daniel exchanging glances over the boy's head when Lucas started to doze off, leaning against Daniel saw Shaw's arm. Clara felt her heart tighten. The scene was both beautiful and terrifying. "I think someone needs to go to bed," she whispered. "I'll take him," Daniel offered. And before Clara could protest, he was already carefully picking Lucas up. Lucas snuggled naturally into Daniel Zause's chest, mumbling something about cars and superheroes. Clara guided them to the bedroom, watching as Daniel put his son to bed with the delicacy of someone touching something precious. "Good night, champ," Daniel whispered, adjusting the blanket. "Will you come back tomorrow?" Lucas asked, his eyes still closed. Daniel looked at Clara for guidance. She nodded almost imperceptibly. "If your mom lets me, I'll come back." "Great. Tomorrow I'll show you my dinosaur collection." Back in the living room, the silence between them was different now, less charged with tension, but full of unexplored possibilities. "He's incredible," Daniel said, sitting on the edge of the couch. "Smart, caring, curious. He's everything good. He liked you. Clara admitted, sitting on the other side of the couch. That's not common. Lucas is usually shy with strangers. Maybe I'm not really a stranger. The phrase hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Karma knew they were entering uncharted territory, but for the first time in 5 years, she wasn't facing everything alone. And that scared her more than it should. Isabella Crane watched Daniel from across the restaurant with growing irritation. They had planned a romantic dinner to discuss the next steps in their relationship. She had even dropped some hints about the diamond ring she'd seen at a jewelry store downtown. But there he was, absent-mindedly picking at his food, with a distant look, his mind clearly somewhere else. Daniel, she said, her sharp voice breaking through his reverie. Are you listening to me? He blinked as if coming back from a trance. Sorry. Isabella, what were you saying? Isabella, she corrected, even though they'd been together for 8 months. I was talking about the hospital holiday party next week. Daddy wants you to meet some important investors. Daniel nodded mechanically, but Isabella could see his attention had drifted again. For the past few days, he'd been different, distant, thoughtful, as if something was consuming his thoughts. Is everything okay? She asked, trying to sound concerned, though her irritation was growing. Yeah, just work. Isabella studied his face. She knew Daniel well enough to tell when he was lying. And he was lying now. What kind of work? Some complicated case, a personal situation that came up recently. Daniel finally looked her in the eyes. Nothing you need to worry about. But Isabella was already worrying. In 8 months of dating, she had carefully built her position in Daniel's life. As the hospital director's daughter, she had influence and connections. As a doctor specializing in pediatric cardiology, she had her own prestige. And as the woman beside, Daniel Foster, one of the hospital's most promising young doctors, she had the future she'd always dreamed of. She wasn't going to let anything or anyone destroy that. The next day, Isabella arrived at the hospital early and went straight to her father's office, Dr. Kent Edward Crane. The director was reviewing reports when she knocked on the door. Isabella. What a pleasant surprise. He smiled, gesturing for her to sit down. How's Daniel? Are we still having dinner this week? Actually, Dad, that's what I wanted to talk about. Isabella sat down, crossing her legs elegantly. I'm worried about Daniel. He's been acting very strange lately. Dr. Crane frowned. Strange, how distant, worried. And yesterday I discovered something disturbing. Isabella had in fact discreetly followed Daniel on Sunday. She saw when he went to Clara's house, when he bought the toys, when he spent hours inside. And she had done her research on Clara Evans, single mother of a 5-year-old boy, worked as a freelance graphic designer. He's getting involved with a questionable woman. Isabella continued, choosing her words carefully. A single mother with a history that could compromise his reputation and consequently the hospital's. What kind of history? Isabella opened the folder she had brought, documents she had collected through dubious contacts and some creative manipulations of the truth. Financial instability. Multiple address changes, and she paused dramatically. Child neglect. The boy was brought to the emergency room with a suspicious injury last week. Dr. Crane examined the papers, his face growing more serious. Isabella Moisu had been very careful with the forgery, nothing technically illegal, just creatively interpreted. Isabella. These are very serious accusations. I know Dad, and that's why I'm worried. If Daniel is getting emotionally involved with this situation, he might make decisions that hurt not only his career, but also that child's safety. Isabella Moitu leaned forward, touching her father's hand. Maybe we should report the situation to Child Protective Services. For the child's sake, of course. Dr. Temu Crane hesitated. I don't know if we should get involved, Dad. What would happen if the media found out that the hospital neglected signs of child abuse, that one of our youngest doctors was involved in the situation? Isabella let the implication hang in the air. The next day, Clara was preparing lunch when the doorbell rang. Lucas ran to the door, hoping it was Daniel. He had promised to come back to see the dinosaur collection. Mommy, it's some people in suits. Clara's heart went cold. Through the window, she saw two adults with serious expressions and clipboards in hand. Child Protective Services. Lucas, go to your room and play, please. But what about Dr. Foster? He'll come later. Go on, sweetheart. With trembling hands. Clara opened the door. Mrs. Evans. We're from Child Protective Services. We received a report and need to ask some questions. Clara Q's world collapsed. What kind of report? About possible neglect of your son. Lucas, may we come in? Clara had no choice. For the next hour, they searched her house, asked questions about Lucas's fall, about her finances, about her relationship history. They asked about Daniel, about how often he visited, about the nature of their relationship. The report indicates that you may be putting your child at risk by exposing him to unstable relationships, one of the social workers explained. That's ridiculous. Lucas has never been neglected. He fell at the school playground. Yes, we'll be checking that with the school too, and with the doctor who treated him. After they left, Clara sat on the living room floor and cried. Lucas appeared in the bedroom doorway, confused and scared. Mommy, why are you crying? Did we do something wrong? No, sweetheart. We didn't do anything wrong. But as she hugged her son, Clara couldn't stop thinking. Who would do something like this? Who would want to separate her from Lucas? And why did she have the terrible feeling that this had everything to do with Daniel? When the phone rang an hour later, she answered with her voice still thick with tears. Clara, it's Daniel. I'm heading over. Can I know? The word came out harsher than she intended. Don't come. What happened? Child Protective Services was here. Someone made a report against me. Said I'm neglecting Tatu. Lucas. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Daniel. I think it would be better if you didn't come here anymore for everyone's sake. Clara. No, don't do this. Let's figure this out. She hung up the phone but couldn't ignore the feeling that her life had just gotten complicated in a way she never could have imagined. The subpoena arrived on a cold Tuesday morning, delivered by an officer who could barely look. Clara in the eyes. The paper trembled in her hands as she read the words that seemed to jump off the page: mandatory appearance at Child Protective Services for clarification regarding neglect allegations against minor. Lucas Evans. Lucas Matum was at school, oblivious to the storm forming around his small life. Chapter. Clara collapsed into the kitchen chair, the document still in her hands, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Neglect, she murmured to the emptiness of the house. They think I'm neglecting my own son. The tears began to flow before she even realized it. 5 years. 5 years raising Lucas, alone, being both mother and father, working as a freelancer, so she could always be present, giving up her own needs to make sure he had everything he needed. And now some malicious stranger was questioning all of that. The phone rang, making her jump. It was Daniel. Clara. I heard about the subpoena. I need to see you. How did you hear about it? The question came out more like an accusation. I have contacts at the hospital. The news reached me. His voice sounded tense, worried. Clara, this is absurd. Anyone who knows you knows you're an exemplary mother. Anyone who knows me, she repeated bitterly. The problem is there's apparently someone who doesn't know me making false reports about me. I'll go with you to Child Protective Services as the doctor who treated Lucas. I can testify. No. The word came out as a scream. Daniel, don't you understand? Your presence will only make things worse. They're already questioning our relationship. Clara could hear his heavy breathing on the other end of the line. What relationship? Clara, we don't even have a relationship. The coldness in his voice hit her like a slap. Exactly. And that's why you need to stay away from me and Lucas. She hung up before he could respond, but the phone immediately rang again. Clara looked at the screen and hung up again. 5 more calls followed before she finally took the phone off the hook when Lucas came home from school that afternoon. Clara tried to maintain normalcy, but children have a sharp perception for adult anxiety. Mommy, are you sad? Lucas asked, dropping his backpack on the floor and running to hug her. I'm a little worried, sweetheart, but it's nothing to do with you. Is it because of Dr. Succo Foster? He didn't come yesterday. Clara felt her heart tighten. Lucas waited for Daniel all day, asking every hour when his doctor friend would arrive. She had made up excuses, said he was busy at the hospital, but her son's innocent questions were like knives in her chest. Lucas. We need to talk. Chapter 2. Clara sat on the couch and pulled her son onto her lap. Remember when I explained that sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions? Lucas nodded, his brown eyes so much like Daniel Chaw's fixed on his mother's face. Well, Dr. Foster won't be able to visit us anymore. Why? Lucas Au's voice came out small, confused. Because he's very busy being a doctor and saving people. But he said I was his special friend. The tears. Clara had managed to control all day came back with full force. I know, sweetheart. I know. Lucas hugged his mother's neck, feeling her sadness even without fully understanding it. "It's okay, Mommy. We still have each other." That night, after putting Lucas to bed, Clara stayed awake in the kitchen, surrounded by documents, bank statements, medical appointment receipts, school reports, photos of Lucas, happy and healthy. She was building a desperate defense against accusations she didn't even know the details of. Her hands shook as she wrote a letter explaining every aspect of Lucas' life, every care she took, every sacrifice she made. It was like having to prove she was human, that she loved her son, that she deserved to be a mother. The worst part was the feeling of being alone again. For a few days, she had allowed herself to imagine that maybe she didn't have to carry everything alone. That maybe Daniel, could be a positive presence in Lucas's life, that maybe they could find a way to work as a family, even if not traditional. But now everything was falling apart, and she was back to the place she knew well, alone against the world, protecting her son the only way she knew how. Meanwhile, across town, Daniel paced back and forth in his apartment, trying unsuccessfully to call Clara. The feeling of helplessness consumed him. His medical mind analyzed the situation. Someone had made a specific report against Clara right after he started visiting her. It couldn't be a coincidence. He thought about Isabella. How she'd been acting strange lately, asking questions about his free time, about where he spent his weekends, the way she had suggested, seemingly casually, that he should focus more on his career and less on distractions. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Isabella. "Hi, honey, I heard you're worried about something. Want to talk?" The concern in her voice sounded fake, studied. "How did you know I'm worried?" "Well, you're my boyfriend. I notice these things." Daniel closed his eyes, a terrible suspicion taking shape in his mind. Isabella. "Do you know anything about a report to Child Protective Services against one of our patients?" The silence on the other end lasted too long. "Why would I know about that?" "Answer the question." Isabella. Daniel. "You're scaring me. Why would you care about a report against some random patient?" "She's not just some random patient." The words came out before he could stop them. "And you know that, don't you?" Another revealing silence. Isabella. "What did you do? I protected you." Daniel. "Protected us. That woman was taking advantage of your kindness, using her son to manipulate you. It was you. It wasn't a question. You made the report. I saved you from a situation that could destroy your career." Daniel hung up the phone so hard he almost broke it. The anger he felt in that moment was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Isabella had attacked. Clara had attacked. Lucas had attacked his family. His family. For the first time, Daniel admitted to himself that now Clara and Lucas were his family, and he would do anything to protect them, even if it meant destroying the career he had sacrificed so much for in the past. Daniel didn't sleep that night. Sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and papers scattered around, he worked methodically to build a case against Isabella and her father. Every email, every conversation, every document that could prove the conspiracy against Clara was being carefully organized. By 5 in the morning, he had collected sufficient evidence recordings of conversations where Isabella Montsa admitted to having investigated Clara saw emails exchanged with dubious contacts to obtain false information, and the most damning of all, a recorded conversation where she confessed to her father that she had fabricated part of the evidence. The recording app on his phone had become his best friend. Isabella, in her arrogance, had been careless in phone conversations over the past few days, especially after he started questioning her directly. At 7 Haziras in the morning, Daniel was at the door of Child Protective Services waiting for them to open. He had called earlier, scheduling an urgent meeting under the pretense of having relevant information about the Shatsom Evans and Shaw's case. The social worker who received him, the same one who had visited Clara, seemed surprised to see him. Dr. Waltos Foster. We weren't expecting to see you here. Dr. Santos, I need to talk about the Lucas Evans Tabkas case. There's crucial information you need to know before making any decisions. They sat in a small, poorly lit room. Daniel placed a thick folder on the table. First, I want to make my position clear. I am Lucas Evans' biological father. Dr. Santos's eyes widened as she picked up a pen to take notes. His mother, Clara Evans, and I had a relationship 6 years ago. When we broke up, she was pregnant, but I didn't know. I only found out last week when she brought us Lucas to the hospital after an accidental fall at school. Daniel Cho took a deep breath before continuing. Since then, I've been visiting my son, trying to establish a relationship with him. Clara is an exemplary mother, Dr. Santos. What you're investigating is a complete fabrication. Dr. Foster. These are very serious accusations, and I have proof. Daniel Na opened the folder revealing documents, photographs, and a digital recorder. The report against Clara was fabricated by Isabella Crane, a doctor at St. Vincent Hospital and daughter of the director, Edward Crane. He turned on the recorder. Isabella's voice echoed through the small room. I saved you from a situation that could destroy your career. That woman was taking advantage of your kindness, using her son to manipulate you. Dr. Santos stopped writing, staring at the device. There's more. Daniel continued, switching to another audio file. Isabella's voice again, this time in conversation with her father. The documents I obtained show a pattern of neglect. It's not technically false, Dad, just creatively interpreted. The silence in the room was deafening. Daniel Chum continued presenting evidence emails where Isabella organized the collection of false information photographs she had taken of Clara Chau's house without authorization, even receipts for payments made to private investigators. Foster. Dr. Santos finally spoke. Are you telling me the entire report was fabricated out of jealousy? Exactly. Isabella saw Clara as a threat to the relationship we had. When she discovered I was spending time with my son, decided to remove Clara permanently. Daniel leaned forward, his voice heavy with emotion. Dr. Santos, I've worked as a doctor for years. I've seen real cases of child neglect, seen children who truly needed protection. Lucas Evans is not one of those children. He is loved, cared for, protected. His mother sacrificed everything for him. He pulled a series of photographs from the folder images he had discreetly taken during his visits. Lucas, playing happily, his organized room full of books. Clara, helping with homework, the two of them cooking together. Is this a neglected child? Daniel asked, pushing the photos forward. Look into his eyes. Do you see fear, sadness? Or do you see a 5-year-old boy who is loved and secure? Dr. Santos examined the photographs in silence. In each one, Lucas radiated happiness and confidence. And to Clara, Daniel continued. She works as a freelancer specifically to have schedule flexibility and always be available for Lucas. She chose to live more simply financially to give him constant presence. Is that neglect or is that love, Dr. Chong? Foster. I understand your position, but you clearly have a personal interest. I do. I have an interest in protecting my son and the woman who raised him alone because I was too much of a coward to be present. The words came out like a painful confession. But my personal interest doesn't change the facts. You were manipulated by someone who wanted to use the system to resolve a personal matter. Daniel Mum placed the final piece of evidence on the table, a complete medical report about Lucas Au's fall, including photos of the accident site at school and witness statements. The fall was completely accidental. I examined Lucas personally. There were no signs of abuse, no suspicious patterns of injuries. A 5-year-old child fell from the slide trying to imitate Superman. This happens on playgrounds every day. Dr. Santos closed her notepad, clearly disturbed by the revelations. Dr. Tuss. Foster. If what you're telling me is true, this is a serious violation of the child protection system. It is true, and I'm willing to testify about all of this, even if it hurts my career. Daniel looked her directly in the eyes. My career means nothing if I can't use it to protect my family. An hour later, Daniel left Child Protective Services with the assurance that the case against Clara would be immediately dismissed and that an investigation would be opened against him, Isabella, and Dr. Chang Edward Crane for system abuse and fabricating false reports. He took out his phone and dialed Clara Sam's number. After several attempts, she finally answered. Clara. It's Daniel. Don't hang up, please. Daniel. I already told you the case has been dismissed. You won't have any more problems with Child Protective Services. Silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean, Soul? Isabella fabricated the report. I proved it this morning. You're free. Clara. Lucas is safe. He could hear her starting to cry on the other end of the line. How did you find out? Because I know, Isabella. And because he hesitated. Because there was nothing more important to me than protecting you both. Daniel. Can I come over? There's a lot we need to talk about, and... Lucas must be wondering where I am. This time the silence was longer. But when Clara finally responded, Her voice was full of an emotion Daniel hadn't heard in years. "Come over. We're waiting for you." The news leaked on Thursday morning. Daniel was at the hospital when he started noticing the strange looks from colleagues, conversations that stopped abruptly when he walked through the hallways. It was only when he reached his office that he found Isabella waiting for him, her face livid with rage. "You destroyed me," she said, her voice trembling with contained fury. "You literally destroyed my life." Daniel closed the door behind him, maintaining his composure. "You destroyed your own life." "Isabella, I just brought the truth to light." "The truth?" Isabella laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "The truth is that you threw away an 8-month relationship, your career at this hospital, and my reputation, all for a woman who hid your own son's existence from you. You fabricated evidence against an innocent mother, sought your father's influence to manipulate the child protection system. That's not love. Isabella, that's sick obsession." Isabella moved closer to him, her eyes shining with a mixture of desperation and anger. "I loved you. Daniel, I was building a future for us. You were building a prison." Daniel replied calmly, "For me, for you, and in the process you almost destroyed an innocent child's life." The door burst open, and Dr. Gent Edward Crane entered, his face red with anger. "Foster." "My office now. Dad, don't." Isabella tried to intervene, but her father's look silenced her. In the director's office, the atmosphere was tense, like a rope about to snap. Dr. Tipkong Crane sat behind the desk, his fingers drumming nervously on the wooden surface. "You've made quite a mess, Dr. Foster. I exposed a conspiracy that used this hospital's resources to persecute an innocent family." Daniel replied, keeping his voice steady. "You betrayed my daughter's trust, recorded private conversations without consent in defense of a child, and the recordings were made after one." Isabella admitted to fabricating evidence. "I had the legal right to protect myself and my family." Dr. Crane stood up, walking to the window. "Your family. You didn't even know this child existed until last week, and that gives me even more right to protect him now." The director's phone rang. He answered with an irritated expression, but his face grew paler as the conversation continued. "I understand. Yes, I'll check. No, I haven't had access yet." He hung up and turned to Daniel with wide eyes. "That was the press office. A local journalist is investigating the story. Apparently, someone leaked information about the whole case." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. He hadn't spoken to the media, but in today's world, sensational information traveled fast. That same afternoon, the city's main newspaper website published the headline, "Doctor uses father's influence to fabricate report against single mother out of jealousy." The article was devastating in its details, how Isabella had manipulated documents, how the director had used his position to facilitate the false report, how an innocent child had been put at risk for personal motives. Daniel Wang's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, colleagues, even strangers who had somehow gotten his number. He turned off the device and went straight to Clara's house. When he arrived, he found Clara sitting in the living room with Lucas, on her lap watching the news on television. The anchor was talking about the case using terms like abuse of power and system manipulation. "Mommy, why are they talking about us on TV?" Lucas asked, confused. "Because some people did wrong things, and now everyone will know the truth. Dr. Cho Foster is on TV too." Daniel Tso sat down next to them, feeling the weight of the situation. "Lucas, you know that sometimes adults make mistakes, right?" Lucas Spot nodded. "Well, some adults made very big mistakes and tried to hurt you and your mommy. But now everyone knows you didn't do anything wrong. And you protected us." "I tried, champ." Lucas Cha smiled and nestled between Daniel and Clara, just like a superhero. That night after Lucas went to bed. Clara and Daniel talked in the kitchen. The television continued running updates about the case. Isabella had been suspended from the hospital. Dr. Cameron Crane was being investigated by the medical board, and there were rumors that both could face criminal charges. "You didn't have to do this," Clara said softly. "Expose your whole life, your career." "I did have to," Daniel replied. "Clara, you don't understand. When I saw what I saw, Isabella Chalsum did when I realized Lucas could have been taken from you because of her lies." He stopped struggling to find the right words. "I couldn't live with myself if I didn't fight for you both. And now your career at the hospital is probably over." Daniel shrugged. "There are other hospitals, other opportunities. But there's only one you and one Lucas." Clara looked at him for a long moment, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "5 years ago, your career was more important than our relationship. 5 years ago, I was a young idiot who thought he knew what was important in life." Daniel admitted, "It took me 5 years to discover I was completely wrong." Clara's phone rang, a journalist wanting an interview. She hung up without answering. "This will pass," Daniel said. "The media will find another story. People will forget. But Isabella, she'll never recover from this." As if conjured by his words, Daniel's phone vibrated with a message from Isabella. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed everything I believed in. But someday you'll realize you lost the best thing you ever had." Daniel showed the message to Clara, who read it silently. "She still doesn't get it, does she?" Clara commented. "She still thinks this is about you choosing between her and me. Isn't it?" Clara looked at him with an expression that was both sad and hopeful. "No, Daniel. This is about you finally choosing to do the right thing regardless of anything between us." And in that moment, Daniel knew Clara was right. Isabella had fallen not because he had chosen another woman, but because he had finally found the courage to protect his family, something he should have done years ago. The storm was passing, but its consequences would echo for a long time. 2 weeks had passed since the story broke in the media. The dust was starting to settle, but significant changes had occurred. Isabella Pont had been fired from the hospital and was facing charges for document falsification. Her father had been temporarily removed from his position as director, and Daniel had decided to transfer to a smaller hospital on the outskirts of the city, a decision that surprisingly gave him peace. He was spending more time with Lucas, who still called him Dr. Muon, Foster, or my doctor friend, but the relationship between them had naturally deepened. Lucas had started asking when Daniel Cho would come back before he even left the house, and always ran to the door when he heard his car arriving. It was a sunny Saturday morning when Clara finally made the decision she'd been putting off for weeks. Lucas was in the backyard playing with the dinosaurs. Daniel had brought the day before and making dramatic roars and creating epic battles between the toys. Danielle. Clara said, placing 2 coffee cups on the kitchen table, "I need to tell you something." He noticed the seriousness in her voice and sat down. "What is it?" "Lucas asked me a question last night, a question I couldn't answer." Clara took a deep breath, preparing herself. "He asked me why you look so much like him." Daniel almost dropped his cup. "What did you say?" "That sometimes people look alike by coincidence. But he's smart. Daniel. Very smart. And he's starting to make connections." Clara looked out the window at Lucas, who was now making a triceratops fight a tyrannosaurus. "I think it's time we told him the truth." "Are you sure he's still so young?" "He's 5, but he's mature for his age and he has the right to know." Clara sat across from him. "Besides, I don't want him to find out by accident or have someone else tell him. He deserves to hear it from us." Daniel nodded slowly. The idea both terrified and moved him. "How do we do this?" "Together, simple, honest." They called Lucas inside and sat on the living room couch. Lucas settled between them, still holding his favorite triceratops. "Lucas, we want to talk to you about something important." Clara began, her voice loving but serious. Lucas looked from one to the other, his expression becoming curious. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Actually, it's a good thing." Clara looked at Daniel, encouraging him to speak. Daniel took a deep breath. "Lucas, do you remember when you asked me if I had children? I remember you said it was complicated. Well, actually, it wasn't that complicated. I just didn't know how to explain it at the time." Daniel crouched in front of Lucas, getting to his eye level. "Lucas, I'm your dad." Lucas blinked several times, processing the information. "My real dad, yes, champ, your real dad." Lucas looked at Clara. "Mommy, is it true?" "It's true, sweetheart. Dr. Foster, Daniel, is your father." For a moment, Lucas was silent, looking between them. Then an expression of pure joy spread across his face. "That's why we look alike. The teacher at school said, I have the same eyes as you." Daniel laughed, feeling tears sting his eyes. "That's exactly why. And that's why you know how to make pancakes like Mommy, and why you like the same cartoons I do." Lucas was practically vibrating with excitement. "I always wanted to have a dad, and I always wanted to have a son just like you." "Daniel," replied, his voice thick with emotion. Lucas threw himself into Daniel's arms, hugging him tight. Can I call you Daddy now? You can call me whatever you want. Lucas? Daddy. Daniel? Lucas shouted, testing the words. Daddy. Daniel. I like it. Clara watched the scene with tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling, seeing Lucas, so happy, so naturally accepting. Daniel, as his father, was more than she could have dreamed of. Daddy, Lucas said, suddenly pulling back to look Daniel in the eyes. Are you going to live with us now? The question caught both adults by surprise. Daniel looked at Clara, uncertain how to respond. Lucas. Clara said gently, your father has his house and we have our house, but families live together. Lucas protested. At school, all my friends live with their mom and dad. Not all families are the same, sweetheart. Clara explained. Some children live just with their mom, others just with their dad, others with their grandparents. But I want us to be a normal family. Lucas said, and for a moment his joy gave way to a worried expression. Don't you like each other anymore? Daniel and Clara exchanged glances, both realizing they were entering complicated territory. Lucas. Daniel said carefully, your mother and I like each other very much. You're proof of that. But sometimes adults need time to figure out how to make things work. How much time? The direct question from a 5-year-old left them speechless. Clara laughed nervously. We don't know, sweetheart. But what matters is that now you have a father who loves you very much and who will always be present in your life. And I'll get to see you every day. Lucas asked Daniel, if your mother lets me, I'd love to see you every day. Lucas turned to Clara with a determined expression. Mommy, will you let him? Clara looked at those two identical pairs of eyes looking at her hopefully and felt her heart melt. Of course I will. Lucas celebrated by jumping on the couch. Now I can tell everyone at school that I have a doctor dad and that he's a superhero too, superhero. Daniel asked, amused. You saved me and Mommy from the bad people, didn't you? Daniel looked at Clara, and for the first time in weeks she smiled at him, a genuine warm smile full of possibilities. Yes, Lucas, I tried to do that. So you're my superhero daddy. That afternoon, the three of them made pancakes together. Lucas insisted on showing Daniel how his mother had taught him to crack eggs and chow. Daniel pretended to be impressed with the technique. Clara watched the two most important people in her life interacting with a naturalness that surprised her when Lucas took a nap after lunch. Clara and Daniel sat in the backyard. He accepted it better than I expected. Clara commented, he's an incredible child. You did a wonderful job. We did, Clara corrected gently. Even without knowing it, you were present in every characteristic of his, in every smile, in every curiosity. Daniel looked at her. Optu. Clara. About what? Lucas asked about us living together one step at a time. Daniel, she interrupted gently. First, let's learn to be a family. Then we'll see where that leads us. But even saying that, Clara couldn't deny that the idea of having Daniel around permanently no longer sounded scary. It sounded like home. 4 months had passed since Lucas discovered the truth about Aunt Daniel. The small family's routine had established itself naturally. Daniel spent mornings at the hospital, had lunch with them whenever possible, and spent evenings at home with Clara and Lucas. He still kept his apartment, but most of his belongings had already migrated to Clara's house. Lucas had flourished with his father's constant presence. His grades at school had improved. He was more confident, more sociable, and the teacher had commented to Clara about how he seemed happier and more secure. The boy had quickly gotten used to calling Daniel Tansu Daddy, and the naturalness with which he did it melted both adults' hearts. It was a Thursday night when Daniel came home with a strange expression on his face. Lucas was doing homework at the kitchen table and Clara was preparing dinner. Daddy, Lucas shouted, running to hug him as he did every night. Guess what? The teacher said, I can present my family at the science fair. Really? And what are you going to present? Daniel asked. Picking Lucas up, I'm going to talk about how you saved lives at the hospital and how you saved me and Mommy too. Clara smiled, stirring the sauce in the pan. He's super excited. He wants to make a poster with photos of you working. Can we go to the hospital on Saturday, Daddy? Just so I can see where you work. Of course, champ. But now finish your homework while I talk to Mommy. Okay. Lucas nodded and returned to the table, concentrating on his math exercises. Chant. Daniel approached. Clara, wrapping his arms around her from behind while she cooked. What was that expression when you arrived? Clara asked quietly. Nervousness. Daniel admitted, kissing her neck softly. Nervous about what? Because today I made an important decision. Clara turned in his arms, studying his face. What kind of decision? The kind that will change our lives. Daniel took a deep breath. Clara, these 4 months have been the happiest of my life, not just because of Lucas, but because of you too, because of having this. He gestured around the kitchen, embracing the domestic life they had built together. Daniel, let me finish, he interrupted gently. I know we made mistakes in the past. I made mistakes. And I know you're still afraid that I might run away again when things get difficult. Clara lowered her eyes because he was right. Despite everything they had built, part of her still held the fear that one day she would wake up and would have decided the responsibility was too much. But, Clara, look at me. He gently lifted her chin. I'm not going anywhere. Not this time. Not ever again. How can you be sure? Because I understood something I didn't understand in my 20s. Danielle smiled, running his thumb across her cheek. I understood that a career is just what you do, but family is who you are. Lucas appeared in the kitchen, interrupting the moment. I finished my homework. Can I watch TV before dinner? You can, sweetheart. Just half an hour. Clara replied, after tea. Lucas left. Daniel took on Clara Chaw's hand. There's something else. What I talked to Dr. Chash Chen today. He offered me a permanent position at the new hospital with a salary increase and more flexible hours. Clara smiled. That's wonderful. Daniel, you deserve it. I'll accept the offer if you accept mine. What offer? Daniel stepped away from her and, to her complete surprise, knelt down in the kitchen. From his pocket, he pulled out a small blue velvet box. Clara Evans, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Will you marry me? Clara brought her hands to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. Daniel, it's not an expensive ring. He continued, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant solitaire. It's not extravagant, but it's real. It's honest. It's the promise that this time I'm going to stay. Daddy, why are you on the floor? Lucas's voice came from the kitchen doorway. Daniel smiled, keeping his eyes on chum Clara. I'm asking your mother to marry me. Lucas's eyes widened, and he ran to them. Really, are you going to get married if she says yes? Daniel replied. Lucas turned to Clara with a pleading expression. Say yes, Mommy, please. Clara laughed through her tears, looking at the two men in her life. Did you two plan this together? No. Lucas protested. But I want you to get married. That way we'll be a real family. We're already a real family, sweetheart. Clara said, crouching down to his height. But if you get married, Daddy will live here always. And I'll have a father and mother like the other boys at school. And saw Lucas. Daniel interrupted gently. Even if your mother doesn't want to marry me now, I'll still be your father. That will never change. But do you want her to marry you very much? Lucas turned to Clara again. And you, do you want to marry Daddy? Clara looked at Daniel, still kneeling on the kitchen floor, holding a ring that represented much more than a marriage promise. It represented the man he had become, the family they had built despite all obstacles, and the future they could have together. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Lucas, shouted, jumping. You're going to get married. Daniel stood up, sliding the ring onto Clara's finger with hands trembling with emotion. Is it really a yes? It's a yes. Clara confirmed. And when he kissed her, she could feel 6 years of hurt finally being healed. Lucas squeezed between them, hugging them both. Now we're a real family. We always were, champ. Daniel said, embracing them both. It just took us a while to figure that out. That night, after tone, Lucas fell asleep. Clara and Daniel sat in the backyard planning the future. It wouldn't be easy. They still had a lot to rebuild, a lot of trust to strengthen. But for the first time in years, Clara felt completely secure. I won't lie, she said, playing with the ring on her finger. I'm still scared. Of what? Of waking up one day and discovering this was all a dream. That you'll realize you took on too many responsibilities. Daniel pulled her closer. Clara, I can promise you many things. I can promise I'll love Chum. Lucas, for the rest of my life. I can promise I'll try to be the best husband possible. I can promise I'll work every day to deserve both of your trust. But the only thing I can promise you with absolute certainty is that I'll never leave again. No matter what happens, we're in this together now. And for the first time in 6 years. Clara completely believed a promise Daniel made. 6 months after the marriage proposal on a sunny Saturday morning, Clara woke up to Lucas jumping on the bed, wearing his new suit, with his hair perfectly combed. Mommy, today's the day you're going to marry Daddy. Clara smiled, feeling a mixture of nervousness and pure joy running through her veins. They had decided on a small, intimate ceremony held at a friend's family farm just an hour from the city. Nothing extravagant, nothing that wasn't genuinely them. Are you excited, sweetheart? Clara asked, kissing her son's forehead. So much. Daddy said I have a super important mission today. And what's that to carry the rings? He said he only trusts me with this mission. Clara felt her eyes fill with tears. Over the past months, watching what Daniel Tom and Pshum Lucas build their father-son relationship had been more moving than any romance she could have imagined. Daniel hadn't just become a present father, but had become the kind of father Lucas had always deserved. 2 hours later, Clara was getting ready in the main bedroom of the farm. Her dress was simple but elegant, an ivory lace design that reached her knees with 3/4 sleeves that delicately covered her arms. No veil, no grand productions, just her authentic and happy. You look beautiful, daughter, said her mother. Grace, adjusting a small crown of natural flowers in Clara's hair. Thank you, Mom, for being here, for supporting us. Clara. Grace held her daughter's hands. In all these years, I've never seen you so happy. And Pasu. My God, how that boy has changed since his father came into his life. It was true. Lucas had flourished in a way Clara didn't even know was possible. His grades at school were excellent. He was more confident, more sociable. Daniel's presence had filled a void Clara didn't even realize existed. A gentle knock on the door interrupted the moment. Can I come in? It was Daniel Cho's voice. You can't see the bride before the ceremony. Lucas shouted from the hallway. I just want to talk to her for a minute, champ. I promise I won't look. Clara laughed. Okay, you can come in, but close your eyes. Daniel entered with his hands covering his eyes, looking a bit ridiculous, but completely adorable in his navy blue suit. What's wrong? Clara asked, amused. I just wanted to make sure you hadn't changed your mind. Seriously. You're nervous, terrified. Daniel admitted. Not because I don't want to marry you, but because I want this to work out so badly that I'm afraid of messing everything up again. Clara approached him, his eyes still closed. Daniel, look at me. You said not to look. Now I'm telling you to look. He opened his eyes, and his breath caught in his throat. Clara, You're ready to marry you. Stunning. You're absolutely stunning. She moved closer, adjusting his tie. You look very handsome, too. And stop being nervous. We're going to work out. How can you be so sure because I love you? Because you love Lucas. And because we've been through the worst and made it here. Lucas appeared in the doorway, impatient. Are you going to stand there talking all day? People are waiting. The ceremony took place in the farm's garden under a pergola decorated with wildflowers and flowing fabrics. There were only 20 guests, close family, and some intimate friends. No orchestrated music or elaborate decorations, just guitar and voice, simple flowers, and lots of love. When it was time for Clara to walk to the makeshift altar she held, Lucas's hand, who had insisted on giving her away to his father. Are you ready, Mommy? Lucas asked, serious like a little gentleman. I'm ready. They walked together through the garden while the music played softly. Clara could see Daniel waiting, and the expression on his face was one of pure love and admiration. When they reached him, Lucas made a small, formal bow. Daddy, I'm giving Mommy to you, but you have to promise to take good care of her. I promise. Lucas, forever. Lucas smiled and went to sit in the front row, proud of his mission accomplished. The officiant, a family friend, began the ceremony with simple words about love, family, and new beginnings. But it was when it came time for the vows that emotion really took over. Clara. Daniel, began, his voice trembling slightly. 6 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life when I let you go, but maybe we needed that time apart to become the people we are today. For me to learn what really matters. He paused, looking at Uncle Lucas in the front row. You gave me the greatest gift any man can receive, a wonderful son and the chance to be a father. But more than that, you taught me what unconditional love is. Clara wiped away a tear that insisted on falling. I promise I'll never leave again. I promise I'll be the husband you deserve and the father Lucas deserves. I promise our family will always be my priority. And I promise I'll spend the rest of my life proving I deserve the second chance you both gave me. It was Ciao. Clara turn. Daniel. When you appeared at that hospital, my first instinct was to protect Lucas and protect myself because I was afraid to believe you had changed. She looked at Lucas, who was watching everything with total attention. But you proved day after day that you were no longer that 20-something young man who was afraid of commitment. You became the man I always knew you could be. I promise I'll trust you. I promise we'll build our family based on honesty and love. And I promise Lucas will always know he has 2 parents who love him more than anything in the world. When it was time for the rings, Lucas stood up solemnly, carrying the small pillow as if it were the most important thing in the world. The rings, please. Lucas, the officiant said. Lucas delivered the rings with adult seriousness, but couldn't contain his smile when he whispered, "Now you're going to be married forever." Daniel Foster. Do you take Clara Evans as your wife to love and respect her in all moments of your lives? I do. Kent Clara Evans. Do you take Daniel Foster as your husband to love and respect him In all moments of your lives, I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. The kiss was sweet, full of promises and hope. And when they separated, Lucas ran to them, jumping into both their arms. Now we're officially a family, he shouted, making everyone laugh. The party was simple, but joyful: home-cooked food, live music, children running through the garden. Daniel danced their first dance as husband and wife to a song about second chances and new beginnings. How are you feeling, Mrs. Foster? Daniel whispered in her ear as they danced. Like I've come home, she replied. Even after everything we've been through, especially after everything we've been through. Later, when Lucas was sleeping in Daniel's lap during the party, Clara looked around at all the smiling faces of people who loved and supported their family. There were no professional photographers, just cell phones capturing genuine moments. There was no extravagant decoration, just sincere love. Do you regret not doing something bigger? Daniel asked, noticing her thoughtful look. Never. Clara replied without hesitation. This is perfect. This is us. This is our family. Our family, she repeated, savoring the words. When the night ended and the last guests left, Clara, Daniel, and Lucas went home together. Lucas slept on the way, exhausted but happy, still wearing his little suit. I think it was the best day of his life. Daniel commented, carrying his sleeping son into the house. One of the best of mine, too, Clara said, admiring her new wedding ring. After putting Lucas to bed, they sat in the backyard, still dressed in their wedding clothes, contemplating the starry sky. So Hinton, Daniel said, Here we are. Here we are. Clara agreed. Husband and wife, a complete family. Daniel pulled her closer. Do you know what this means? What it means, our story is just beginning. And for the first time in years, Clara knew he was right. It wasn't a happy ending they had reached. It was a new beginning full of infinite possibilities. And so Clara learned that some stories don't have endings. They have new beginnings. That true love isn't the kind that never faces storms, but the kind that chooses to rebuild after the rain passes. That family isn't just those who share the same blood, but those who choose to stay when everything seems lost. And that sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't leaving to chase dreams, but coming back home and fighting for what really matters. Because in the end, it's not the diplomas on the wall or professional successes that define us. It's the love we leave as our legacy and the people we choose to protect. And maybe deep down, this story also speaks to all of us about our infinite capacity to forgive, start over, and believe that it's never too late to choose love. If this story touched you, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell us where you are listening to this message from. Your support is what allows us to continue bringing stories like this.